Hi there.
Hi.
Welcome, Sarah. Oh, welcome, Sarah. Whoops. Thank you for welcoming us into your home. So when I think of you, I think of like a creative life. I don't think of you being a painter or a weaver, but somebody whose creativity is in every element of their lives. You seem to be an interior designer as well. So how would you talk to people about your life, really?
Well, I started out as a professional as a designer, and I think when you go through the training of being a designer, you literally are trained to always examine how else and what else. And it just occurred to me that that's the only way to live, is to play that out in my life. Well, what else? I want to live in Africa. Let's go do that.
Wow.
I'd like to go do this. Let's try that. And it's not like the pivots are necessarily easy, but they're something that I know is possible. And I do really want to be living and do live a life of what else? I wonder. And it's all an experiment, right?
Yeah.
So hence the creating and hence the creativity that plays out literally in the painting, but also in, as you say, interior design or working with organisations. How can they be more effective in their communication, or how can they be more innovative, or how do they create a joint venture with a supposed competition? All of it, it's all a created conversation.
Yeah.
And it's all sourced in design.
So you've lived in Australia, Africa,
Europe. I lived in Hungary for a year and a half, London in various stints, both as a backpacker and then subsequently for a little wee while.
And was it design and creativity that took you to each of those places? Like, was that the focus of that part of the journey?
Moving to Africa, the thought process was definitely creative as such, but it wasn't in search of a creative job, if you will.
Sure.
I literally reached a point in my life where I thought, is this all there is? And I wanted experiences that took me out of myself and out of my familiar and out of the known. And I went and visited a friend in South Africa, and I went there to do a road trip with him. For a number of reasons it didn't work out, but I ended up travelling through Botswana and Namibia and I think Zambia. And one night I'm in Botswana and the mosquitoes are everywhere, and I'm sitting on a dugout canoe and I'm thinking, oh my God, I could take leave from work. And I literally hadn't thought that thought before. And off the back of that, thinking I could take perhaps 2 months leave. Fast forward 3 months later, I'd quit my job, sold everything, and was heading to a job in Tanzania. And then stayed for another couple of years because the experiences are just so rich. And I always knew that the opportunity, I counted on the opportunity to come back here would always be here. And at the time I was there, and there was just so much. And I had experiences that renovating luxury tented camps in the Serengeti and building honeymoon suites in Zanzibar, and doing work with local artisans there who taught me so much, and really life-changing moments where I got to see what I expect or what I think is normal. It's not. Yeah. It's only what I think is normal. And I had so many moments where, to count on a table having 90-degree corners on 4, I just think that's a given.
Yeah.
No. Not if you're from a culture where that's a different priority. So I just had my life blown open. Hence, I wasn't leaving anytime quickly. I wanted to soak it up for as much as I could. So to answer your question, it wasn't for a creative job, and yet it was very much a creative process internally, and very much an intention of having me be exposed to as much and as varied and diversity, which of course is all design and creativity.
Yeah. Your current work, the design, the paintings and the weaving, is that your current focus, or you do photography as well?
Look, I think given how I'm wired, diversity is part of what has my creativity or creative flow effectively. So I've had a portraiture photography business for 20 odd years.
Wow.
And I work very closely with newborns, is probably one of my favourites.
Oh, right.
Couples, families, and it really is about my working with you as my client and doing the work with you so you get connected to what matters. And if it's a family shot, there's love of the family. And very often we get caught up they didn't take out the garbage, or we've got to pay the electricity bill, and all the rubbish that gets in the way in the day-to-day living. What is always in the background is love, and what I do is bring that to the forefront, so it's no longer the normal human stuff that gets in the way.
Yeah.
And then I do the same thing in the portrait shot, headshots I do for business. What is it your business is about, and what makes you want to do what you do for your clients? And again, that's a process of you getting present to what matters, and we do that in a dialogue, and then I shoot that. But then there's the weaving, and then there's the painting. It's kind of all the same thing, because so much of it is about getting present, whether it be me or me doing the work to work with you, so you're present. And all of those things keep me, I guess, oiled, for want of a better term, oiled in terms of creativity, so that when I'm working with my clients, whether it's personal coaching or it's working with an organisation to be more innovative, it keeps me on the edge of my chair and sitting up straight, because I'm attending to that creative muscle in my life. And it's not about being a painter or being a photographer. It's about the being of creativity, and that being part of everything that I do.
Yeah. I love the phrase attending to the creative muscle. I think I might write that down. Because it's
and maybe in a year I'm no longer painting, and I have no attachment to whether I'm not painting anymore.
Yeah.
It is purely the creativity, and however that's expressed, it's irrelevant actually.
Yeah.
The integrity is to ensuring that it is expressed some way.
Yeah.
The weaving really is a meditative process. And for everyone who says they can't meditate, I hear you. Sitting still and quietening a mind, anyone's mind, particularly my mind for myself, it's not a second. It's not it's not in my bow of familiar things.
Yeah.
What I find in the weaving is it allows my mind to calm, because my hands are occupied, and I can literally get me out of the way, and then what I end up weaving is as much a surprise to me as anybody. I have no idea what's coming out, and sometimes it's because I can see something in a bit of the form, which I've then put in a bath and then softened, hence the ability to weave all these twigs together. Or it might be completely, oh my goodness, look at that, which is more often the case.
Yeah.
So it's very much a whack on a movie, or sit and daydream, or be on the phone with a friend, or chat to my cats and have this work underway.
Yeah.
It's and I completely fell upon it. It is just such a beautiful experience.
One of the things that I struggle with as an artist is if I don't know what I'm expecting to go to, I can go off into the most extraordinary tangents and not complete. So I try and get, when I start doing it again, try and have a focus. I'm going to make a whatever. But does that matter to you? Do you need to have a kind of a completion in mind? This will be a basket or a hanging or a...
Oh, it's such a critical piece in the creative process. What am I wanting to produce, and how attached to it, or how particular are my parameters? With my weaving, I literally have no agenda.
Yep.
And I find that the most freeing. That gives me the most scope to surrender to whatever form is there.
Yep.
And how I do that is literally, I will have a bath with my favourite oils, and then when I get out, I will put the big billowing, because it's natural, it's like a dried frond from a bungalow palm.
Yeah.
I pop that in the bath overnight, and that softens. The next morning, that then is soft enough to weave and play with.
Fantastic.
I literally never know what's coming out of it. And the more I can turn off my brain and not have any of those expectations, it means I can sit in the in-between space. And that in-between space is fraught and delightful and delicious and terrifying. And it's such a critical component of the creative process for me.
Yep.
And some days I just can't sit there.
Yeah.
Sometimes I want to make it something, and I just know today's not the day to do that. Today's the day to get physical, go for a walk, or go running, or bake. Anything that's not requiring me to be able to step out of my head. Some days it's not on tap.
Yeah. Whenever I've done classes, and I've done numerous, I usually think, today I'm going to go and learn a technique, or I'm going to know how to work with this material. And I've often said to the teachers, don't hustle me to finish or make something. This is about learning. It's about practicing with a material or a technique. And if I finish something, that'd be good. But I actually don't care if I don't. Hence, I've got a room full.
Well, I mean, I think that's part of the creative process. It's not necessarily about finishing. It's really about honouring your relationship with your own process and whatever that material is.
Yeah.
I mean, there are paintings here, and there's not a single painting that I have only one layer of paint. There's multiple layers, and I don't always know when they're finished.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I have a painting that I sold a couple of weeks ago, and I literally asked a friend's 4-year-old, "Do you think it's finished?" And she said, "Yes, it's done. You've done enough," in a very small but very clear voice. And I wasn't clear. She was clear. So I went, "Great, put it online, sold it." She was right.
That's so interesting.
And the other thing is, pieces respond to different people at any one time. So I'm not a subscriber to that. Is it finished? Therefore, is it right, or is it?
Sure. I just find there is a time where I have to let something go and have to say, enough on that, enough. I've reworked it enough.
And isn't it tricky? That's such a dance. It's like that in between space. Who says and how and when? But I think there's such honour to being in the inquiry of, well, what if this is finished?
Yeah.
And then simply sitting in that space, or let me be open to if there's something else to do.
Yeah.
And what might come from that.
Talk about the exhibition a bit in terms of it's into the light.
Coming into the light.
Yeah.
So coming into the light, it's been all the work has been completed during the last 2.5 years.
Right.
And in that period, I've been very much in a personal inquiry about what's seen and what's not seen, what's private, what's public, what's personal, what's available, what am I willing to expose or not expose, and then mapping that onto where we are in the world. And it's so interesting now, you know, things are being revealed that
I know. About to be revealed.
And about to be revealed. You know, it's an interesting time, and there's so much that we hold precious and secret, and yet I question why and what's that about, and the freedom that comes with when there's a diminishing of that secrecy, let's say. So this 2.5 years really has just been almost a non-verbal, just an inquiry of observation. And in that time, that's when I discovered the weaving as a meditative practice, although I would never have called it that to start with. It just seems to have emerged. And then the painting, and I respond very much to light and dark and the contrast and the almost like the tension of that. And then the blending of colours, like what happens when this becomes that. Very much in the same way that I'm interested in, Robin will have an idea or a notion or a perspective, and Sarah has the same, but what happens when they come together?
Yeah, sure.
That's not possible without Robin and wouldn't have happened without Sarah. So there's something about that crossover of it was mine and now it's ours, and the what wasn't going to be but now is.
Yeah.
And that's what you'll see in the pieces in the exhibition.
Now we're going to move on to talk a bit about your paintings for the exhibition. So talk to me about the one beside you there.
So this one was one that I did very early in that 2.5 year journey, where I was really just starting to play with, light and dark really, and what happens when light starts to come through really dense colour. Yeah. It's almost like a technical journey, but I'm responding and exploring as I'm playing with the paint and the brush. Like with all of them, I had no idea what we were going to get. What we have is just what we got, essentially. This particular one came out of... I'll liken myself somewhat arrogantly to Picasso. He had a blue period. My blue period's been lasting for about 10 years. I just love something about the oceanic depth that blue, and particularly as a pigment, nothing else works quite the way blue does. And there's something about being in water and in a conversation or in an experience that the blues give me a sense of. And this really was about looking up. And I imagine that I'm in a pond and there's light through there, but you know when you see the sediment through the water and you see the shafts of sunlight, this was essentially, I'm in my whatever space I was in at the time, looking up, reflecting what's up there, but I'm here, what does that mean? And really just playing with the light, but always referencing that really beautiful blue saturation. Years ago, I used to teach drawing to a group of students across a year process, and my job was to teach them to draw not only perspective, 2 and 3 perspective, but also to understand colour and how to create it. And what I did for it's probably about 5 years when I taught this class was I would have them for the first month or so do every week when we would meet do life drawing of a cup, of your ring, exchange your necklace, whatever. Quick drawing so that they were able to lose that attachment to it looking like the cup, the necklace, the blah, blah, blah. And then over time, what always would happen, because it wasn't about drawing, yes, it was about them getting facility around an agency around holding the pen and the pencil, but it was really about connecting what they see to their brain, which told their hand what to create. And that connection, we don't tend to think of drawing or creating as actually connecting it all, but it really is. And what I could guarantee, by about April, particularly the end of April, the grappling and the frustration of why are we doing this and what's going on, and the learning, they would literally start popping like popcorn. And there was one piece that I used to take in, which was a brass door handle as one of the many items I took in boots and whatnot as props. And when they were starting to, we know brass is brown, right? But when they started to include the oranges and the purples and the blues, I knew that I'd done my job, they really started to see not just what was there that they assumed, because we know brass is brown, but to really be present and conscious and see in the moment what's there.
So this piece was really a journey in playing with what happens when there's a light background, as that's the foundation, and then when there's a solid energy and saturation comes through. Typically up until this point I had worked with a solid foundation as the base and then light coming through and that tension. This was really a play on the opposite, and then of course using a warm palette and a mix of acrylic and oil. So this was really a dance in purely experimentation. This was all about how do I play with that which I don't know and I'm not comfortable with.
And it seems to me your approach is a very liberating one too. I guess with the gallery had experience with artists who the work is very constructed and the framing is perfect and was I don't have a sense sometimes when I look at some artworks that the people have enjoyed doing it. That there's a pleasure in what they're in the process and the outcome, whereas yours does seem to be quite liberated and liberating in that it's playful. And there's a product, but it's you don't begin in order to finalise a product.
No, that's absolutely accurate. It's not about the end product at all.
So you don't think I've got to have 20 paintings this size for the exhibition in 6 months.
I wouldn't be able to move. That would completely paralyse me. And I think I think there's something that when I have enjoyed something and I've had enjoyment in the making.
Are these some of your favourite colours though? The sort of the ochre, the orange, the yellow. I mean that yellow over there is just luscious.
Isn't it? It's like acid. It's fantastic. Look, a lot of this is the Australian earth. And just that red earth and that ochre. This just there's something quite extraordinary about being out in the Australian outback and having that red earth. And I remember when I lived in Arusha in Tanzania in the dry season, it was hot and dry, and there'd be this orangey soil caked into my feet. No matter how much you scrubbed them, it would be that way every dry season. And there's something about being connected to the earth, about being grounded, and so to bring it into the journey of playing and purely experimenting, and in the process here switching off the brain, but really what feels like the next right move, or what happens if what colour is calling me, that, and how does that work with that, and how does that work with that, and how much yellow, but not asking it from an intellectual point of view, really just asking the question and being in the inquiry and in that space, that unknown of what's going to show up. That space that's so deeply uncomfortable, and yet that's where the magic resides.
It's interesting for me that on the one hand, yeah, it's the Australian desert, but then there's a sand dune feel for me as well, and the froth of waves.
Yeah, I see that.
So it's, you know, when waves kind of break, you know, that feels to me like a bit like a breaking wave against a sandbank maybe. So, yeah, there's lots of ways people can relate to it. Well done you.
And you know that with any artist, what their journey is available in your viewing, which doesn't mean it all should be playful and happy and la-la, not at all. But it is actually important to me as an experience of play, really. But the creative process isn't gentle. You know, there's plenty of grappling. When I look at this canvas and it's white, I'm deeply threatened and uncomfortable, and you know what comes with the creative process or embarking upon anything new is that voice that goes, who do you think you are?
Yeah,
how dare you, and what makes you think you can, and will you ever finish it? Whatever your flavour is.
No one will buy this, and
no one will even like it. Like all that stuff, that's a critical component of the creative process, and to think that it's not going to happen is naive.
Yeah.
It has to be there. Look, I started off, my after school care was art school.
Oh right,
so
you did that too.
I was very much given, from the age of 7, 6, who knows, young.
Yeah.
I was given permission to play.
Good.
And then add that to the training called design of what else and how else.
Yeah.
And through all of that is the stitching of play, and that's really the essence.
You know, when I look at this one, the sort of, you know, that's like dancing fireflies, or and just those colours for me would bring a daily celebration. You know, because that colour I find just so invigorating. So a lot of your work, and even the ones where you're in the ocean, that's you know, you can, when somebody takes that home, they're able to be in that ocean as well.
And that's honestly, as a creator and as a maker, my making it available for the world, it's kind of on the proviso that you take home something that gives you something.
Absolutely.
Or what is the value of what I'm doing?
Yeah.
It's not for you, but if you are going to have it, then I would absolutely wish for you to have something delicious that speaks to you in whatever flavour. So be it joy or the experience of ocean or play.
Yeah.
I do commissions. Usually what I would do is I do a consult literally with my client, and I would find, or prospective buyer, I would ask them what sentiments they wanted, or what they wanted for that space, so be it a lounge room or a bedroom, and really understand what colours were referenced or connected or associated with that particular emotion or experience. That way I can have that alive as an intention as I'm creating. And like all of my work, there would be many, many layers to it, and they wouldn't get to see it until we're done. And then it would really be a reflection of the emotions and associations that they wanted in their colour palette, fitting their interior space.